Hello, today's video I will discuss faction and sectorial balance in Infinity N5. I will use trooper attributes and average them across each faction and sectorial to compare how each army is equivalent or different from each other. The attributes that I will use are attributes that influence the game mechanics for each interaction with the opponent and mission. This is a standard trooper profile with all their attributes displayed. The attributes highlighted in red are often used to determine the outcome of a player's decision. Close combat and ballistic skill are used to win combat-related interactions. Physical is used to prevent or avoid a negative interaction. Willpower is used in quantronic attack and defense, intuitive attacks, and for interactions with mission objectives. Armor and biotechnological shield attributes are used to prevent the negative consequences of an attack interaction. I will use the calculated average of the trooper attributes to evaluate the strength of each faction and sectorial, and to provide a different perspective on whether certain armies are better than others. There are some exclusions to the calculation. I will be excluding characters from all the armies. Characters often have better attributes than their equivalent troopers and with better skills. Characters often fill a niche gap in the faction is missing, or allows for a hyper-skilled trooper that performs better than equivalent troopers. Some characters end up being an efficient point-cost multi-tool profile that pushes out regular profiles in a faction. This allows characters to skew the faction or sectorial average. Every faction and sectorial includes a war correspondent. This singular trooper is not part of a theme or identity for each army. While every faction has access to one, not every player includes one in their list. However, the maxim, if everyone is special then no one is special, applies, and the war core is removed from the calculation. We'll exclude helper bots used by doctors and engineers. Each army's helper bot is the same and I think is not required for calculating the average. It offers nothing of value for the overall army's evaluation. The remaining remotes will be included because there are slight differences across each army. I will exclude tag ancillary remotes for the same reason as helper bots and warcores. And vehicles will be excluded as well, mainly because not every army has them, and because of that they can influence the results. Some inclusions to the calculation. Transmutation troopers have another profile which results from the transmutation rule. While it is the same miniature, it has been given two profiles, so I have counted such troopers as their number of profiles, which is 2. For example, diggers, armed prospectors. They have both an initial state and then they have a battle ravaged state due to taking one wound. And so while this is one miniature on the game table, it actually in fact has 2 profiles. Some profiles have more than one miniature allocated to it, such as Puppet Masters, Post-Humans and Uber4 Commandos. These profiles are more than one because they have profiles for each miniature that belongs to the unit. So I have included those as well. Some profiles have 2 others or more, and each profile has been counted as its own profile. Post-Humans, for example, can have up to 3 profiles and have been counted as 3 separate profiles, not the one. So why attributes? Well, because skills vary across each trooper. Skills and equipment provide rules to troopers that make them perform in a certain way and to achieve a certain playstyle by the player. For example, skirmishers. Skirmishers perform a similar role in the game amongst factions. They are generally used as midfield specialists in objective-based missions. They are also used as midfield deterrents to slow or obstruct an opponent's game plan, or to be assassins to target and kill a key enemy trooper. They generally have similar skill sets to achieve this. However, their attributes are what is important. Without the correct attribute, the skill would be useless, or underperforming compared to an enemy trooper. Yet, if we remove the skills from our thinking, we see that the 4 examples are not noticeably better than each other. hence why I decide to use the selected attributes to evaluate each army. The layout will be as presented, the faction on top with its corresponding sectorials underneath. Each army will be displayed individually following the organization from the Army 7 app. Han Oceania is first. Military Orders has a slightly higher close combat, willpower, and biotechnological shield attribute average compared to the rest. Han Oceania has a higher ballistic skill average than the rest. Kestrel has the lowest armor average. Yujing is second. They are all very similar to each other. Yujing has a higher physical attribute. Both Yujing and White Banner have a slightly higher close combat average. Imperial Service has a lower armor average. Ariadna is third. Tatari Army Corps has a 1 point decrease in close combat and armor attribute compared to the rest. Everything else is the same across the faction and sectorials. Hakizlam is fourth. Kapukauki has a lower willpower attribute. Hakizlam and Rama Task Force have a higher physical attribute, with Rama also having a higher biotechnological shield average. Hakizlam, Hassassin Baram, and Rama Task Force have the highest willpower average across more sectorials than others. Nomads are fifth. Bakunin has the higher close combat and physical attribute. Everything else is the same across sectorials. Combined Army is sixth. Shasvasti Expeditionary Force has the lowest average for close combat, ballistic skill, physical, willpower, and armor attributes. Onyx Contact Force has the higher biotechnological shield average. Aleph is seventh. The other faction that has a willpower average of 14 across most of its armies. So Hakizlam and Aleph generally have the highest average willpower, which is 14. Steel Phalanx, let me say that correctly. Steel Phalanx has the highest close combat average within the Aleph army organization. The non-aligned armies, which are 8th, the mercenaries are evenly spread. No one faction or sectorial has more than one higher attribute. Ikari Company has the highest close combat average. White Company has the highest ballistic skill attribute. Drew's Bayram Security has the lowest armor average. O12 is 9th. O12 faction has the lowest close combat average. Torchlight Brigade has the higher biotechnological shield. Japanese Secessionist Army is 10th. All faction and sectorials have higher close combat averages than the rest of the Human Sphere armies. Within JSA itself, Oban has a lower physical average. And finally Toa in 11th. Although they are out of production, they still are playable and many people still have miniatures and play them in the games. So they are average all round, neither higher or lower than other factions or sectorials. When you go back through, they're quite an average army given their attributes. However, they have unique skill sets which definitely pushes them in the, I guess some would say, higher tier, but I would also say probably the more unbalanced army out of all the other armies in the current N5 game. So some of you may be thinking that players commonly include characters in their lists and this should be included in the averages. Yes, that is correct, but a player can also play a faction without any characters and still be competitive. Originally, for the second half of this video, I was going to explore players' picks for their lists. I was planning on using data from the Infinity Statistics Initiative to calculate the players' selection for tournament games. If players select the most optimal profile for the lists, and this is done on a large enough scale, then the average should result in a higher set of averages for each attribute compared against a faction or sectorial. However, after scrolling through the data, I realised that ITS 16 Part 1 was using N4 troopers, with ITS 16 Part 2 using N5 troopers. This made it unsatisfactory to compare because players do not have access to the same number of troopers in N5 as they did from N4, so it would be a pointless comparison. Also, I have noticed a decline in submitted lists for N5. The tournament data is heavily skewed by N4 trooper selections. It may be better if I wait until after ITS 17 for a more settled consensus of trooper selection in N5. This is the end of the video. I aim to do the comparison between players' selections and once ITS 17 has finished. This will allow a full season to gather data for N5. Perhaps there'll be better averages for player selection with normal factions. Just wait and see. As you can see from the comparisons, neither faction is overly dominant in one aspect. I would say apart from JSA, because they do have a higher close combat attribute overall compared across all factions. However, most factions are reasonably balanced with their attributes. Now, this does not mean that players will always select troopers from the whole faction. They will always select the best trooper to get the job done at the end of the day. But you can use the averages to determine whether the troopers you select for your lists are better than the average, and that may make your list a bit of a more competitive list over the course of the game. At the end of the day, this was just to compare averages across factions and to see which factions are more stronger in certain attributes than others. And at the end of the day, considering all trooper profiles taken into consideration, neither faction in N5 currently is more powerful than the other. So with that, thank you for watching, and may your dice rolls succeed.